Story 1. My housemate and I are in our 20s and live in a unit block with a remote-controlled gate and allocated parking spaces. It's pretty common for residents and tradespeople to park in the shared driveway inside or outside the gate for short periods of time, while unloading large items, since there's very rarely available street parking nearby, and everyone is usually pretty chill about it. My housemate and I are moving and figured a way to get both of our cars into the car park to load with boxes furniture, so we don't have to be constantly shuffling cars. Our car spot is the one at the farthest end of the car park, next to the building. My car was parked there, and my housemate was parked behind me, which doesn't block the driveway or any other parking spot, only the one that belongs to me. We've spoken to the owners of the two closest parking spots about it, and they said it's totally fine because we only do it for short periods of time, and anyway it doesn't block them getting in or out of their spots. This morning, while we were inside getting boxes, our elderly neighbor from 3 spots down took offense to the fact that my housemate's car wasn't in an allocated bay. So he decided to park across 2 other units' parking spaces to block us in. We came outside, finished packing, and tried to get out around his car, but there wasn't enough room, so we found out whose car it was, and my housemate went to knock on the door. First, he refused to open his door to speak to her, so my housemate, who is deaf, came to get me because she couldn't hear what he was saying with the door between them, but she could hear that he was yelling, and she wasn't comfortable. I went to talk to him, and he also yelled at me through the door and wouldn't open it to speak to me until I specifically asked if he could so we could work it out face to face. Then he initially refused to move his car, and kept saying he was going to call the police and have us fined, despite the fact that he was also parked illegally. I pointed that out, and he told me it was different for him because he's an owner. His granddaughter had to come out and convince him to just move his car into his unobstructed car spot so my housemate could leave. He finally came outside and started pointing at the no visitor parking signs. I apologized and told him that we do live there, and we are moving out, hence why we needed to have both cars there to pack. He refused to believe me. I have met this man several times and introduced myself by name and unit number, and I say hello every time I see him around, but I guess he didn't remember my face because he was convinced we were guests and demanding to know who we were visiting and how we got through the gate. I said we used our gate remote. He kept talking over me and asking where we'd gotten a gate remote and who had given to us. I said, the real estate, because we live here, and asked if he would like to come to our unit and see all the moving boxes inside to prove that we were who we said we were, and he just walked off. He finally got in his car and moved it into his parking spot, and my housemate left in her car, and I waited for him to finish very, very slowly parking so I could apologize again and thank him for working it out. While I was waiting, his granddaughter came outside and apologized to me for his behavior, and I explained why we're parked like that, and she was really nice and understanding. When he finally finished parking, I went up to him, said thank you and sorry, it won't happen again. He blew straight past me and didn't acknowledge that I was standing there speaking to him at all. It really felt like the way a little kid storms off after losing an argument, and I was pretty shocked to have a fully grown adult behave so rudely when I was being polite and thanking him, even though he was the only problem in the situation. The kicker is, my housemate's car was nowhere near his parking spot, and not obstructing anything, it just wasn't in an allocated bay. His car, however, was blocking the driveway, 2 of the neighbors' car parking spots, and at least 4 cars, but since he's an owner and we're just lowly renters, he fully believed we were the ones in the wrong. Saint 8. When I was 18, young and stupid, I met a guy that I married after only 3 months of dating. Let's call him Fred. Fred turned out to be one of the most violent people I had ever met, and I escaped the marriage with the clothes on my back and the air in my lungs. Before things fell apart, Fred decided we needed a new car. It was registered in his name, insured in his name, and the loan was in his name. My name did not appear on anything associated with the car's purchase. He handed me the payment book for this car, and I was dumb enough to keep up the payments for a car I had no legal right to. We were in the army at the time. After several months, he had to go to a different station, but there were several months on my assignment until we could be together again. He took the car. I kept up with the payments. When the time for me to change stations arrived, we planned to spend the weekend in a hotel room together. It went badly, ending with him pulling a gun on me. I managed to persuade him to bring me back to the barracks, where I told my roommate what was happening. I gave her his picture and asked her to give it to the guys on guard duty and tell them what happened because he had a gun. Sure enough, he entered the barracks looking for me. The guys on guard duty called the MPs when he made a gesture that exposed the gun. He was let off in handcuffs. On my way home for leave, I stopped by his parents' house to return all of the household goods that were his. This included the payment book for the car. Several days later, I received the payment book in the mail, with a note that I should continue payments. I sent it to him with a note to pay for it himself. A few days later, I got the payment book with a more strongly worded note to continue payments. I returned it with a note that I would not pay, and if he sent it back to me again, I would burn it. The fire was lovely. About 2 days after the ashes cooled, I got a call from the bank, asking when they would get the next payment. I reminded them that everything about the car was in Fred's name. I planned to divorce him so I would no longer pay for the loan. I told them, "Oh, by the way, he plans to ship this car to his next station. Would you like his current address?" The Grinch would have been proud of my evil grin. The next day, a repo truck rolled up his driveway and towed the car. The story I got is that he ran after it, waiving 3 months of payment in cash. The repo guys kept it moving. Along with losing the car, he also lost a new set of radial tires, a CB setup, and some luggage that was still in the trunk. Story 2. Firstly, English is not my native language, and I have dyslexia and dysorthographia, but I use a program to help with this, so it should be readable. To the woman my husband met at the pizzeria, let's not meet. My husband ordered pizza for us on Friday night for dinner. He went to pick it up with our toddler while I was finishing an order of brownies for a friend's party. I need to explain that the place he went to has a policy. If you order online and show up when your pizza is supposed to be ready, you skip the line, pay for your order, and leave. The whole process usually takes less than 2 minutes, even when the store is really busy. So, last night, my husband took our toddler with him, but didn't bring anything to keep our child occupied. This is usually very important because our son is prone to meltdowns and is currently being assessed for level 2 autism. He walked our son into the store, skipped the line, and went to the counter like he was supposed to. An employee saw him right away. As he was telling the employee his name for his order, a middle-aged woman, who was first in line, started causing a scene. The employee, a young lady who my husband said was very professional, tried to explain the policy, but the woman didn't want to hear it. Seeing that our son was showing signs of being overwhelmed by the woman's yelling, my husband told the employee to take her order first, hoping it would resolve the situation. But no, it didn't. The woman, with a haircut similar to the stereotype associated with entitled behavior, complete with blonde highlights, still wasn't calming down. She took her time ordering, complaining and shouting the entire time. Now, keep in mind, it was 5:30 p.m. on a Friday at a busy pizzeria. The place was packed, the woman was still yelling, the lights were bright, and our son had nothing to distract him. My husband was doing his best to hold on to our son and fish his phone out. But then it happened. Our son had a full-blown meltdown. He was screaming and flailing. The store is very echoey. My husband hadn't yet paid for the pizza, and there were too many people between him and the door. He was honestly doing his best, but our son wasn't having it. The woman told him to make your kid be quiet already and refuse to order or let anyone else order until our son was silent. My husband explained that our son is autistic and overwhelmed, and it would help if she stopped yelling. Now, he was frustrated. He's usually a calm man, but he's 6'3 inches 1.92 m and built like a linebacker. He knows that if he raises his voice, this woman could claim he's being abusive or threatening, so he kept his voice calm and level. He saw sympathetic glances from most of the people around him, and from the cashier, which was really appreciated in that moment. But the woman wasn't done. She then yelled something truly awful, translated for this context. "Well, you shouldn't take such a disabled child out of the house." Apparently, the entire store went silent except for our son, who was still melting down. I'm glad I wasn't there. I might have been arrested for what I would have done. The woman turned around, looking smug, and tried to resume ordering. A man, who my husband said was even taller than him and clearly a bodybuilder, tapped the woman on the shoulder and told her to get out. She tried to argue, but the employee backed him up and told her they wouldn't take her order. The woman left the store, still yelling. It took a few minutes, but once Blue Eye was playing on my husband's phone, our son started to calm down. My husband paid for the pizza and left the store with our order less than 5 minutes later. Funny how, once the hostility was gone, our son calmed down in no time. As my husband was leaving, the woman was waiting outside, ready to shout at him some more. But before she could, the man from the store poked his head out the door and warned her not to even think about it. My husband nodded his thanks to the man and hurried to the car. Now, to the man who stepped in to help my husband, thank you. I wish I could meet you to express my gratitude in person. As for the woman, let's not meet. Story 3. I live in the northeast of England and am originally from Wales. I've owned a house in Wales I've been renting out for the last 10 years. Everything has been super smooth until a year ago. The tenant stopped paying rent, made multiple promises to pay, etc. In the end, I got so frustrated I decided to sell the place. I cut my losses on the outstanding rent around £3,000 and told the tenant if he left by a certain date, I'd write off the rent. Tenant goes over the deadline by a couple of weeks, but ultimately leaves. However, the house is in a terrible condition. The tenant had painted many of the walls bright orange and had got this paint everywhere, including the carpet and skirting boards. The oven had half-cooked rotten food. He'd been too lazy to put rubbish in the outside bin, so simply threw it in the shed. Anyway, a bit of a side story, but for context. I live 6 hours away, but my mum and stepfather live 30 minutes away. I've decided to sell, but of course, I can't sell the house in its current state. My mum has generously offered to help, and we set a date for me to come back down to start the work. We order a skip, etc. 2 solid days of work later, the place is looking much better. It's not going to win House of the Year, but enough to sell. One of the issues is that we can't seem to get the garage key to work. My stepfather promises to come the following week and drill the lock out. Fast forward to the following week, and my stepfather is in the process of drilling the lock out when he's interrupted by a neighbor who we will call EN, entitled neighbor. EN, excuse me, can you please stop doing that? You're damaging my garage. Stepfather heir. Actually, this garage belongs to my stepson who is selling this house. EN, well, I've been using this garage for the last 12 months, so he has no right. Seth. Turns out that the EN noticed that the tenant wasn't using the garage, so drilled out the locks, swapped a new lock, and started using it. When it was finally opened, it was full to the brim with his stuff. He didn't think anyone would notice. I find out the information and call him telling him he has 24 hours to empty the garage and replace the lock. He can't do it within 24 hours, apparently apologies and promises to drop the new keys through the letterbox in a few days. It's annoying, but luckily, it's all working out and I don't want to cause too much hassle with the neighbor. My mum visited the house the following week, picked up the key, opened the garage, and yes, it was now empty. Job done. Fast forward 6 months, the house is sold, arranging key handover, etc. However, I got a text from the new owner the following day with a picture of the garage filled with stuff. He texted, "Thank you for sorting out the keys. Can you send in someone to clean this up during the next week, please? Thank you." Under the sale contract, It's my responsibility to ensure the house and any buildings are empty for the sale. Otherwise, I can be liable for cost, etc. Straight away, I know what's happened and called the EN. Turns out he kept a spare key on the lock change. Yes, in hindsight, I should have done my own lock, but I didn't think anyone would be that stupid. He noticed no one was using the garage, so he decided to start using it again. I was furious. He couldn't understand why I was so mad, asterisk, but you were not using it. So what was the big issue, asterisk? Well, did you ask my permission? No. Does the garage belong to you? No. I called the police and ordered a clearance company to empty the garage. The sheer cheek of the man. Anyway, all sorted now, the garage is empty, locks have been changed, and I have sold the property, and he's been arrested for breaking into my garage multiple times. Story 4. I've asked my friend, Adam, what his scariest moment was during his career as a police officer. I was expecting a murder or something, but he delivered this. One day, Adam, a detective at the time, was heading to the station when he notices a woman standing in front, carrying a thick accordion folder. She's looking at the building, as if she's trying to work up the courage to go in. Adam walks up and asks her if something's wrong. She says, "I think someone is going to kidnap a baby." It takes Adam a few seconds to regain his composure, and he says, "Come with me, ma'am." They go to his office and get settled in before Adam texts a colleague, Martin, to come over. Once he arrived, Adam asks the woman, Shelia, to tell them everything. Shelia runs her own party entertainer business. She dresses up as characters and goes to parties to entertain children. An hour or so earlier, a lady, Donna, emails her, asking to hire her services, offering her over $1,000. Shelia agrees, expecting to be hired for a birthday party or something. She was shocked when the lady asked her to dress up as a social worker, go to a certain address, tell the people there she was part of CPS, take their baby and go to another address. Shelia, realizing that she was dealing with crazy, printed out the emails. But Donna kept trying to gaslight her, telling her it's a joke and the baby will be fine. As Shelia is talking to Adam and Martin, her phone buzzes. Shelia picks up the phone to put it in silent mode, and her face goes white. She somehow got my number. Adam and Martin watch in real time as several more messages come in. At first it's all polite, asking if she had reconsidered Donna's offer. Then they start getting unhinged, demanding that she go through with it. The last message in capital letters sent chills up Adam's spine. "Do it or I'll report you as a child molester." Shelia is understandably freaking out. While Adam calms her down, Martin takes several screenshots of the text messages and sends them to his phone number as evidence, making sure to write down the number. He asks Shelia if she had the emails, and she presented him with the accordion file. Adam and Martin reassure her that she did the right thing and gives her their numbers to contact them. They also tell her to keep collecting the emails and text as they come in and assign officers to watch Shelia's apartment. Shelia gives them the address that she's supposed to perform this prank at. After following Shelia home and making sure an officer is there, Adam and Martin go to the address. A woman answers the door and is a bit alarmed to see them there. After reassuring her that she was fine, they ask her if someone might have a grudge against her and her family. The woman, Esperanza, thinks for a minute, and then a look of shocked horror crossed her face. "It can't be! How did she find us?" Martin asks her who it was, and she said, "My mother-in-law, Donna." Esperanza and her husband, Joseph, met at the university where they were both students and fell in love. Donna was not happy that her son was dating a Mexican and proceeded to use her wealth and connections to break up the relationship and/or ruin Esperanza's life. She managed to get Esperanza fired from at least 2 jobs, tried to report her to ICE despite Esperanza being a natural-born citizen, and spread nasty rumors about Esperanza on social media. Among other things, Joseph put his foot down and told Donna that he would cut off all contact with her if she didn't stop. So she stopped, and for a while things were fine. Joseph and Esperanza got engaged. On the wedding day, Donna showed up to the ceremony in her wedding dress. When she refused to change clothes or leave, police were called to escort her out. As she was leaving, Donna looked at Esperanza and said, "You've taken my baby, I'll take yours." Esperanza and Joseph were so scared that they decided to make an escape plan. When a job offer appeared in Joseph's field across the state, he accepted, and they fled in the middle of the night. They had to live in their car until they found a place to stay. They had to get new numbers, delete their social media, everything. Only a handful of people knew where they lived and their new numbers, and all had refused to tell Donna anything. Somehow, someway, she had found them. Adam told me that he was sickened as Esperanza showed them screenshots of the harassing messages from Facebook. The thought of someone wanting to take a child from anyone, out of pure spite, was enough to make his stomach twist into a knot. Once Esperanza finished, Adam and Martin knew this was a dangerous situation. After waiting for an officer to arrive to watch out for trouble, Adam and Martin complied the evidence they had gathered and were able to get a warrant for Donna's arrest. They went to the address Donna had given in the emails with backup. It was a hotel and Donna was surprised to see them there. Inside her hotel room were several suitcases with plenty of baby clothing supplies along with passport tickets for a non-extradition country. Also present was the laptophone that she had used to send the email texts to Shelia and a loaded pistol. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and Donna's attorneys, who were from the best law firm in the state, convinced her to plead guilty to several charges, including attempted kidnapping and extortion. She was sentenced to a minimum of 25 years and had 2 lifelong restraining orders slapped on her, one for Esperanza Joseph and one for Shelia. Joseph and Esperanza took a job in another state and moved there with the baby after the trial, but they remain in touch with Adam. According to him, they're doing well. Shelia was able to continue her business with no problems. Adam told me, "I've seen many things on the job, but seeing that series of emails and text will always stick with me." Story 5. I cannot believe it. I've met a lot of entitled people, but never anyone this entitled. It all started this morning. My parents love to plant flowers in their yard, everything from hibiscus to water lilies. But their most prized possession and pride are definitely the bougainvilleas. This morning, my mom went out to water the plants and feed the koi fish. That's when our entitled neighbor, who's around 80 years old, entered. They had a conversation that went like this. "Entitled neighbor, can I have your bougainvilleas?" 2 of them. Mom confused, "You mean cutting some to put in a vase?" "Sure." Entitled neighbor, "No, I want to plant them in my yard." Mom, "I'm not sure if the plant will grow after cutting. I'll ask a gardener for their opinion. If it's possible, I can cut it for you." Entitled neighbor, "No need, just dig up yours and plant them in my yard. I have 2 empty spots and thought of your plant." Mom, "What?" Entitled neighbor, "I like the red ones. When can you dig them up and put them in my yard?" Mom, "I just bought those. I can't give them to you yet because they're still growing." Entitled neighbor, "Then let them grow in my yard. No need to wait for them to grow here." Mom, frustrated, "Sorry, but no. If you want them, please buy some at the plant shop." The neighbor kept insisting, even dragging my dad into it, trying to get them for free. When my parents wouldn't budge, he started cursing and then left. What? Update. Before I continue, I need to give some background on this entitled neighbor. He's known around the neighborhood as grumpy, selfish, and entitled. He's also obsessive-compulsive and does things like parking his car, sweeping the floor, or throwing garbage into his neighbor's yard. His neighbors have confronted him many times, but he insists he's done nothing wrong. To make matters worse, his wife, who's also over 80, constantly apologizes for his actions. Now, onto the dog incident. A poor dog had to be admitted to the veterinary clinic because this man broke the poor girl's tooth. He shoved his walking stick into her mouth while she was resting in her own yard. The entitled neighbor walked into their fenced yard, which startled the dog, a French bulldog, and she barked at him. In response, he shoved his walking stick into her mouth. The whole thing was caught on CCTV. The dog's owners decided to have a conversation with the entitled neighbor, with my parents as witnesses. Since the neighbor refused to come out of the house, his wife represented him. The conversation went like this. Wife: I'm so sorry, Mr. N, the dog's owner, for causing so much trouble. N: how are you going to fix this? He's been throwing garbage into my yard, and I didn't say anything because of his age. Now, what did my dog do to deserve this? Wife: he says your dog keeps barking whenever he walks by your house. He was annoyed and decided to punish it. N: my dog is in my yard. What right does he have? Wife: please forgive him. He's old. Besides, a dog's life isn't equal to a human's. Yes, she really said that. The argument escalated while my parents tried to calm everyone down before things got worse. In the end, they agreed to cool off for now. I hoped that would be the end of it, but it only got worse. My parents' plants started wilting one by one. They were distraught and confused until the son of the entitled neighbor came by to apologize. It turns out the entitled man had tried to steal not just the bougainvilleas, but also the moth orchids. He cut the roots, and now the plants are dying. There's a meeting scheduled between my parents, the neighbor's family, and the rest of the neighborhood. I'll update later. Story 6. This is a weird story that just happened over the weekend, though y'all might enjoy it. So, Saturday night, the missus and I are lying in bed trying to go to sleep when I hear some noise from the back door. The storm door opens and slams shut. I'm not fully asleep yet, so I put on pants and a shirt I can find and grab my trusty shotgun. We moved to the mountainside and most of the area is still wooded, and living in such conditions wild animals are an issue. We have bears, coyotes, raccoon and bobcat to name a few. So, as I'm moving to the back door, I hear a window break in the back garage. I look out and see someone breaking into my garage. I scream for the wife to call the sheriff office. Around here 911 doesn't work well for breaking in. We are connected with a couple of counties, and it gets confusing for them. We get quicker response by calling them directly. I'm now in go mode thinking some meth head is trying to score some tools for some quick cash. Got out of the house and noticed this person's truck still running. I did the only thing I could think of and took the key out of the truck and put it in my pocket and waited for the deputies to show up. Took them 20 minutes to show up. One was state police, the other was a local sheriff deputy who were doing radar 10 miles up the road. Wife and I know them both. With my gun in hand, I told them someone was in the garage, and I haven't approached it yet, but here's the key to the perp truck. They go and gun donned out and deal with the situation. The dude was passed out on an old bench seat for an old truck I have by the tool bench. They wake him up and arrest him with little to no issues other than him screaming profanity at them. They told me that I can press charge and to come in on Monday to file the paperwork. He's not getting out anytime soon since, on top of his breaking in, he's being charged with a Dewey. Yesterday, I spent the day traveling trying to fix the window this broke, since no stores that are open Sunday in my local area. While in my travels, I'm fuming at the fact that I'm having to do this repair on a piece of junk door from the 70s. My wife was telling me to maybe let him go with a warning, but I'm having none of it. So, this morning I went to the sheriff's office. The same deputy was there that arrested the perpetrator, so I asked him how the ride with the dude was. This is the version the officer gave me. Officer: why did you break into the garage? Perp: I was trying to get my stuff back, but someone changed the lock. Officer: you know they purchased that place from Kevin 2 years ago, right? Perp: what? That doesn't give them the right to change the lock without telling me. Officer: yeah, they can. You ain't been in that house for like 4 years, and I was the one who got you out of that house because you beat the hell out of your old lady. That's twice I get to arrest you on the same property. Perp: but he shouldn't be entitled to change the locks though. Where else am I supposed to go? A little backstory on the property. We purchased it from Kevin, who's a school board member, and gave us a decent deal on the property. He had the property as a rental for his nephew for a few years. when his nephew started walking in his dad's footstep by getting drunk and beating his girlfriend at the time. He evicted him from the property 2 years before we purchased it. When he evicted him, he emptied the content of the garage as all scrap metal. He found that out Sunday morning when his uncle paid him a visit in jail. Kevin had other renters on the property after. He sold it to us because he didn't want the responsibility of it anymore. He's being charged with trespassing, criminal trespassing, breaking and entering, driving under the influence, and property damage of less than $500. Update. So it's been a little while. I didn't have a chance to meet with Kevin last Thursday since I damn near the day dealing with the police who decided to just bring the attorney who's going to be prosecutor for this case. He was very impressed that I still had all the original receipt for all the tools due to last year's court case. All they would tell me is, because of how much in tools he had access to steal, he would be charged with criminal trespassing, breaking and entering with malicious intent, and attempt of grand larceny, which all makes sense. He would not comment on the possible DUI charge, just asked for the footage of him driving in and shows me taking the key out, backing the story I gave the original officer. They were pretty happy with the evidence and said I should be able to get $500 for the damage done to the door as restitution. As for Kevin, we had coffee yesterday and he spilled the beans on his nephew. I asked him if his nephew was the reason he gave us a good deal on the property, and he said no. He felt most of the property around here is too overpriced and was excited about what my wife was bringing to the school, and he wanted to make sure she wasn't going to struggle while living here. I'm still doing all kinds of work on the house since it's all pretty much 70s-80s type setup. When the nephew was arrested, he was put into the drunk tank and used his phone call to call his uncle. He was still so drunk that the officer had to get the number for him. He then told Uncle Kevin, "Get your ass down here and bail me out right now." Kevin responded with, "I'll see you in the morning sun." So Sunday morning, he went there to have a little chat. So, since he was evicted after his arrest, he skipped town before his court case of assault and battery. His other cousin bailed him out and had skipped out on his bail. Cousin lost $750 on his bail. But it doesn't end there. He asked him what he did to support himself. He wheeled and dealed, as he put it. Worked a few cash construction job and farm job, where, get this, he admitted to go back and steal tools, material and parts to sell them in 3 states. He's been to West Virginia, Kentucky, and North Carolina. He ended up getting decent at locating parts and selling them. This is the twist. One person approached him because he was looking for a couple of blocks in transmission. He was offering $5,000 for those parts. Then he remembered that he had those exact parts sitting in his old garage in Virginia, and he was going to get them. He doesn't remember Saturday evening too well. He just remembered trying to use his key, and it didn't work on the house, and then noticed the door on the garage and tried to get in there since it never had a lock. But I found one that works. That's when Kevin broke the news that after a month of him skipping town, he cleared everything from the house and garage, brought in a dumpster from a scrap metal, and got $850 for all the metal found in the garage. So he asked him what he do with the money. He said he approached his other nephew to reimburse him for the bail money, but the nephew declined and offered it to the now ex-girlfriend. This boy lost his crap on his uncle and demanded he put up bail money. Then he asked if his truck was still at my place. He said no, state police has it. He turned white as a ghost. The plates he has on the truck are stolen tags from North Carolina. He has no driver's license. He asked him if he was in trouble in any other state. He said he didn't know. After he would score, he'd skip town. Kevin gave all that information to the attorney and for them to possibly check any other of the state and city for open investigation on theft. On Thursday, he demanded for a bail hearing, and it should come to no surprise that the judge denied any bail whatsoever. I asked Kevin what happened to his girlfriend. After the nephew was arrested, he went to visit her and wanted to make sure she was going to press charges so that the nephew might be able to get sober and get his life straight. He told her not to let nephew on the property, and he was going to give her a couple of months rent-free to figure things out. She ended moving to Harrisonburg with her sister. She had a pretty effed up upbringing, and sister was now able to help her as she's NC from mom and stepdad. They grew up in Elkin WV and both trying to leave nastiness. Sister ended up getting better with education. She just tried to hook up with the first guy that could take her out of town. He hasn't spoken to her in 3 years, so that's pretty much all the info he had on it.